Right, look, speaking about the Shia, I was okay. This weekend I was looking at some poetry in Urdu, and it was the classic poet Mir Anis. Now he is a contemporary for Mir Taqi Mir, the legend Mir, the Don Mir. But this one seems to only focus or be popular for things like what they call marsiya, which are like the eulogies, the kind of religious poetry dedicated to really just to the battle of Karbala and Hussain radiallahu an and Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an. So it's mainly like, it doesn't have to be Shia, but it's usually Shia literature. It doesn't have to be Shia though, that, to be fair. But generally that's where it's found within the Shia communities. And this got me thinking. So, I mean, I'm not too much into all of that kind of, you know, this kind of thing. But it got me thinking. Because I was learning about Mir Anis. And I thought, you see, as I was learning about him, the poet, I realized, like, as a young person, because he becomes a legend in India for marsiya, for writing these kind of sad, like these eulogies about Karbala, the battle of Hussain, radiallahu an, and things like this. Now, it got me thinking that as a young boy, you see, one of the things he did as well was he studied with Hindus as well. He studied with Muslims, obviously, very learned. But he also studied the Ramayana, Mahabharata, things like this, the great Hindu kind of stories and epics and things like this about, you know, the whole thing, the whole battles for right and wrong, and Arjun and all these kind of great Hindu characters that appear in this battle and stuff like this. And this whole thing got me, now me observing this, I began to think. It got me thinking that, what is it? You see, human beings, we are drawn to tragedies. Okay. We are drawn to, we have, our affinity to tragedy is actually greater than our affinity to the observation of joy. I don't mean experiencing tragedy, but observing. So what many people, let me just expand on this. Many people will love to watch a movie that is a tragedy. Let's take the Titanic as an example. It was a super hit, right? It was a blockbuster. It probably wouldn't have been so if it had a good ending. People don't like good endings. It's weird. Now this sounds crazy, but it's actually true. People like bad endings. I know they don't like to own up to that, but they like watching tragedies. They don't like experiencing tragedies, but they like watching tragedies. They like listening to tragedies. Why? Psychology shows us that when we observe tragedy, like we're watching it for entertainment or listening to it, we empathize with the people going through that. Once it's over, we sense a great sense of relief that we are safe. It also allows us to count our blessings, to make us think, oh wow, like look at all the great things I've got. It also allows us to kind of release emotions, to cry, for example. People who watch movies, read, let's say, sad tragedies, they cry. It allows them to release these emotions. The brain actually releases a certain amount of oxytocin. Releases a certain amount of oxytocin when dealing with tragedies, when observing tragedies. I don't mean undergoing them, when observing them. So cultures want to have their own epic stories of tragedy, to have a good cry. If this also, another point, if done with numerous individuals, it creates a sense of community. So if you do it on your own, that's an individual thing. If several of us get together and hear a sad story, it can actually create a community spirit. So my kind of theory is that a lot of this kind of narrating or storytelling about the tragedies of Karbala are linked in with this psychology. That Muslims kind of also, being human beings, many Muslims, especially in India and those places, felt that need to have their own tragedy story. That they felt that the way things like, let's say, Hindus have the Mahabharata or other people have that, we also have a story of epic tragedy, suffering, death, betrayal, good versus evil, these kind of things in a collective spirit of where crying is encouraged, oxytocin is released, where empathy is realized, where community spirit is created. And I think these are the things that actually kind of kindled that whole culture of these kind of storytellings. And because people, like, I suppose people weren't really familiar with other characters. Like in the past, I suppose your common people don't know about, let's say, Muawiyah radiallahu an, or even other people. So they just hear a name, like let's say Yazid, and it's easy to kind of think of this whole good versus evil and this whole thing. I'm not saying, for example, I'm not in any way kind of belittling the tragedy that occurred at Karbala. I mean, it was a tragedy, unquestionably, it was a tragedy. But this whole storytelling of it, this epic kind of the way it's been kind of turned into this great Mahabharata version and kind of told over and over, and this whole thing, I wouldn't be surprised if along the way this is the kind of underlying subconscious triggers that have led to that. Okay, so that's some thoughts anyway. Let's move on, people. Let's move on. What?